Thou Shalt Prosper, 10 Commandments for Making Money, 2nd edition, by Rabbi Daniel Lapin. Picture this: a 12-year-old Dave Ramsey walks up to his dad one summer day with a simple request. "Dad, I need some money." His father, a natural entrepreneur, looks him straight in the eye and says, "You're 12 years old. You don't need money. What you need is a job." That summer changed everything for young Dave. Sure, he learned how to cut grass, but the real lessons ran much deeper. He discovered goal setting, marketing, and how to build something from scratch. But the most powerful truth his father taught him? Money comes from work. Sounds almost ridiculously simple, right? Yet in a world drowning in "you deserve this" messages, that straightforward principle becomes revolutionary. Thomas Edison nailed it when he said, "Opportunity gets missed because it shows up in overalls looking like work." Dave Ramsey shares this story in the foreword of today's book, and it's the perfect gateway into what might be the most profound guide to wealth creation you'll ever encounter. Thou Shalt Prosper, by Rabbi Daniel Lapin. Now, before you think this is just another budgeting manual, let me stop you right there. This is something entirely different. We're diving into 3,000 years of accumulated wisdom that doesn't just explain how to make money, but why making money is actually a moral and spiritual act. Rabbi Lapin opens with a fascinating observation that Mark Twain also noted over a century ago. Jewish people, representing a tiny fraction of the global population, have somehow achieved disproportionate business success for centuries across wildly different countries and cultures. Why? The answer isn't genetics, Rabbi Lapin assures us. And it's definitely not some secret society. It's a cultural mindset, a set of principles rooted in ancient Jewish wisdom that fundamentally reshapes how you view work, money, and your relationships with other people. Today I'm sharing those principles with you. By the time we're done, you'll understand 10 timeless commandments for building wealth. But here's what's even better. You'll see business and finance not as some cold, greedy game, but as a deeply human, spiritual, and moral adventure. You'll discover why every dollar you earn is essentially a certificate of appreciation, why planning to retire might be the worst decision you could make, and why one of the most powerful steps toward getting rich is, wait for it, giving your money away. So if you're ready to completely transform your entire mindset about money and unlock a framework for prosperity that stood the test of millennia, let's dive in. Let's kick things off with a question that might make you squirm a little. Do you want more money? Don't apologize for saying yes. Think about all the good you could accomplish, the family you could support, the causes you could champion, the security you could create. Rabbi Daniel Lapin doesn't just say it's okay to want more money. He actually hopes you want more. Because the more you want, the more driven you'll be to serve other people. This is the very first, and possibly most crucial, commandment of making money. Believe in the dignity and morality of business. Making money becomes exponentially harder when you secretly suspect it's morally questionable. And let's be honest, our culture constantly feeds us this narrative. Think about the movies you watch. How often is the villain some greedy corporate executive in a glass tower scheming to poison a town or destroy innocent lives? From Wall Street to modern thrillers like The International, Hollywood absolutely loves painting business people as the villains. Sociologists studying primetime television discovered that business people commit more murders on TV than any other occupation. Yes, even more than actual criminals. This message bombards us constantly. Politicians blame Wall Street greed for economic problems. News stories feature, quote, corporate killers laying off workers. Even phrases like giving back to society subtly imply that business activities somehow take from society. This relentless drumbeat affects us whether we realize it or not. It plants doubt, creates shame and guilt around wealth. It generates what the author calls moral ambivalence that sabotages our efforts. Ancient Jewish tradition, however, offers a radically different lens. It views the pursuit of profit and wealth as inherently moral. Why? because you simply cannot earn an honest living without pleasing other people. Professor Walter Williams, a brilliant economist, once described every dollar bill in your wallet as a certificate of performance. If you didn't steal it or extract it through government force, the only way you could have that dollar is by pleasing someone. You pleased a customer, a client, or your boss. That dollar testifies to the value you provided. It's a certificate of appreciation from your fellow humans. This is a game-changing reframe. It transforms making money from a selfish pursuit into an act of service. The author illustrates this beautifully with a story about a young pharmaceutical sales representative he once knew. She dreaded her job, feeling like a pushy salesperson profiting from people's illness. She'd never boast about her commissions. Yet she was also a passionate volunteer for breast cancer research. One day, he overheard her on the phone, aggressively browbeating a contractor into making a donation. When she hung up triumphantly, he asked why she felt comfortable being pushy for charity but not for her job. Her answer was revealing, "But this is for a good cause." She completely missed that her day job was also for a good cause. Her monthly commission check measured how helpful she'd been to doctors, patients, and hundreds of employees who depended on her sales. She was helping deliver life-saving medicine to people who desperately needed it. But because she'd absorbed the culture's negative view of business, she couldn't see the nobility in her own work. This belief in business morality runs so deep in Jewish tradition that it's woven into the very beginning of the Torah. During the 7 days of creation, the word good appears 7 times, but the 8th time it shows up, what's it describing? Gold. Right there at the beginning, gold, the eternal symbol of money and wealth, gets described by God as good. The message couldn't be clearer. Money isn't evil. It's part of God's creation, and it's good. This is your first step toward prosperity. You need to embrace 2 ideas. First, that you're in business even if you're an employee. And second, that business itself is moral, noble, and worthy. When you truly believe this, it fuels your energy, ignites your passion, and gives you the conviction to succeed. Once you've locked in this foundational belief, the next question becomes practical. The answer lies in the 2nd commandment: extend the network of your connectedness to many people. Wealth isn't created in isolation. It's born from human interaction. This truth is so profound it's embedded in one of the Bible's oldest stories, Cain and Abel. We all know Cain killed Abel, but why? Traditional Jewish interpretation suggests that Cain, whose name in Hebrew means "acquisition," believed wealth was a zero-sum game. He thought that with only 2 brothers in the world, the only way to get richer was eliminating his competition. If he owned the whole world instead of half, he'd be twice as wealthy, so he killed his brother. But what was God's punishment? It wasn't just a mark on his forehead. God told him, "You will be a vagrant and a wanderer on the earth." This was the true punishment. Cain wanted to own all the land, but God condemned him to never settle anywhere long enough to build relationships, to trade, to create community. Without people, land is worthless. You can't build a shopping center in an empty desert. You can't create wealth when you're utterly alone. And what's the first thing Cain does after finally understanding his mistake? The Bible tells us he builds a city. A city! The ultimate symbol of human connection and cooperation. Cain learned the great secret. Wealth isn't created by eliminating others, but by connecting with them. This principle explains why every major leap in human prosperity has coincided with a revolution in communication technology. The telegraph and railroad in the 19th century, the telephone and radio in the 20th, the internet today. Each innovation didn't just move information, it brought people closer together, enabling more transactions, more cooperation, and more wealth creation. Consider this thought experiment. Imagine you're the last person on Earth. You'd technically be the richest person in history. You'd own all the gold in Fort Knox, all the Beverly Hills mansions, all the private jets and super yachts. But what would your life actually be like? You'd read by candlelight because nobody's running the power plants. You'd eat canned food until it ran out, then desperately hope you could figure out farming before starving. Your standard of living would be lower than a subsistence farmer in a developing country. Your wealth would be meaningless because there'd be nobody to serve and nobody to serve you. This is why your success depends on the size and strength of your network. And Rabbi Lapin offers a specific ancient model for building these connections. The Hebrew word for friend is shaver. The root of that word shav means indebtedness or obligation. Friendship, in this ancient view, gets forged and maintained through a constant, dynamic exchange of creating and discharging obligations. It's the small rituals we often take for granted. I invite you to dinner, you send a thank you note. You give me a birthday gift, I send you a bottle of your favorite wine. I help your daughter find a job, you get me tickets to a sold-out game. This back and forth isn't just polite social custom. It's the engine of relationship building. It's a dance of creating obligation by giving and expressing vulnerability, by accepting and showing gratitude. This is why finding opportunities to become friendly with many people matters, especially in environments where self-interest isn't the main focus. A professional networking breakfast where everyone's just swapping business cards is far less effective than joining a civic service organization like Rotary International. In a service club, relationships develop naturally within an environment of caring for others. Any business benefit that comes later is a byproduct of genuine friendship, which is precisely why it works so well. You must view yourself not as a wage slave, but as a business of one. Your employer isn't your boss, they're your biggest client. When you see the world this way, every person you meet becomes a potential connection, a potential partner, a potential client for the unique services you offer. And you should be proud of what you do. Just like craftsmen in old European villages who took their occupations as their names, Jacob the glazier, Isaac the printer, Joseph the jeweler, you should be eager to let people know how you can help them. But connecting with others and believing in your work is only half the battle. You also need to understand your most important asset, yourself. This brings us to the third commandment: get to know yourself. The author shares a powerful and humbling story. He says that of all the people who've ever worked for him, there's one man more responsible than any other for every failure he's suffered. That man's name? Daniel Lapin. It's a profound insight. We can blame the economy, our boss, our circumstances, but ultimately, the person best positioned to either help or hinder our success is ourselves. You're your own most important employee, and that employee constantly needs teaching and supervision. How do you do that? Ancient Jewish wisdom offers a powerful mental model. View yourself as two separate entities, a horse and its rider. The horse represents your body, your emotions, your appetites. It's the part craving short-term gratification. It wants to raid the refrigerator, skip the gym, or deliver that sharp, cutting remark in an argument. The rider represents your soul, your intellect, your wisdom. It's the part that knows what's in your long-term best interest. It's your conscience's voice. Your life essentially becomes a constant struggle for control between the horse and the rider. The question is, who's in command? This isn't just a quaint metaphor. It's a practical tool for self-mastery. When you can step back and see this internal tug-of-war, it becomes easier to follow your head rather than your heart. It becomes easier to make wise decisions, even when they're difficult. This concept is so central to Judaism that it's subtly encoded in the very first chapters of the Bible. When God forms man, the Hebrew word for formed gets spelled with an extra letter compared to when he forms the animals. This extra letter, tradition teaches, alludes to the two separate impulses existing within every person, a wise impulse and a self-destructive impulse. Animals don't face this conflict. A lion doesn't debate whether it should go on a diet, it just acts on instinct. But we do. That struggle defines what it means to be human, and your success in business and life depends on strengthening the rider. How? By understanding what truly motivates you. Here, the author introduces a brilliant four-part matrix based on the teachings of an ancient sage named Ben Zoma. Ben Zoma asked and answered 4 questions that get to the heart of all human motivation. Who is wise? Who is powerful? Who is wealthy? And who wins esteem? These 4 questions correspond to our 4 fundamental needs: arising from the fact that we're both physical and spiritual beings, living in a world that can provide both physical and spiritual things. 1. Wisdom. This is our spiritual need for intellectual growth, for learning new skills, for understanding how the world works. 2. Power. This is our spiritual need to control our environment and reduce our vulnerability. It's not about dominating others. It's about having the ability to take a day off work, afford a comfortable home, not worry about how you'll live when you're older. 3. Wealth. This is our physical need for survival basics, food, clothing, and shelter. 4. Esteem of others. This is our physical need for connection, for community approval and respect. And it is a physical need. Studies show loneliness is one of the biggest predictors of premature death. A balanced, successful life requires attending to all 4 needs. If you focus exclusively on acquiring wealth while ignoring your need for wisdom or others' esteem, you'll ultimately be less effective even at making money. This brings us to a crucial, perhaps counterintuitive point about success. That's the 4th commandment. Do not pursue perfection. We live in an imperfect world, and striving for an unattainable ideal can paralyze you. The author uses the metaphor of an airplane. When a plane crashes, we ask, why did it fall? The simple answer is gravity. The real question isn't why planes fall, but what keeps them up. It takes enormous energy, thrust, lift, engineering to defy gravity's natural state. Similarly, in society, poverty is the natural state. It's like gravity. The real miracle isn't that some people are poor. The miracle is that any of us are wealthy at all. The system of free and virtuous economic interaction we call business is the engine creating the lift to overcome poverty's gravity. Is it perfect? No. Does it create inequality? Yes. But as the author demonstrates with a brilliant thought experiment, it's far better than any alternative. Imagine there are 500 beautiful waterfront homes on an island, but 100,000 people want one. How do you decide who gets them? You could hold a lottery. You could let people fight for them with force. You could form a committee to decide who's most deserving. Or you could create something called money, a system allowing people to bid for those homes based on how much value they've created for others. It's not perfect, but is any other option preferable? The pursuit of perfection often leads people to criticize and resent the very system allowing for prosperity. They see the flaws, the robber barons of the 19th century, the Enron scandals of the 21st, and conclude the entire enterprise of business is corrupt. But this is like blaming the entire practice of medicine for a few rogue doctors. Business is a tool of human cooperation, and like any tool, it can be misused. But condemning the tool itself because of a few unethical individuals blinds you to the immense good it creates. Once we accept that we must operate within an imperfect world, the question becomes, how do we navigate it? This requires leadership, which is the 5th commandment, lead consistently and constantly. But leadership, Rabbi Lapin explains, may not be what you think. Hebrew, the Lord's language, has no word for leader. It has words for king and ruler, but not leader. Why? Because a leader isn't something you are. It's something you become by having followers. You can't learn to be a leader. You can only learn to lead. How? First, you must learn to follow. A leader who's not accountable to a higher authority, whether a boss, a board of directors, or a set of principles, is just a tyrant. People will only follow you if they see you're following something yourself. That's why Moses constantly reminded the Israelites he was carrying out God's words. It's why a military officer's authority comes from being part of a chain of command. Second, you must have the courage to confront. The author tells the story of Judah, one of Jacob's 12 sons. When his brothers wanted to kill their younger brother Joseph, Judah proposed a compromise. Sell him into slavery instead. Later his brothers confronted him. Had you told us to return Joseph to his father, we would have listened to you. By failing to confront them with the truly right course of action, he lost their respect. He descended from his position of leadership. Finally, a leader must master both facts and faith. Facts are the easy part, but faith is the true mark of a leader. Faith, in this context, is the ability to see something not yet visible, as if it were already present reality. It's Abraham, promised the land of Canaan, speaking of it as his land even while living as a stranger among others. It's the entrepreneur who sees a thriving business where others see only an empty storefront. This ability to see the invisible isn't just for profits. It's a skill that can be cultivated, and it's essential for navigating the constant churn of the modern world. This leads us to the sixth commandment: constantly change the changeable while steadfastly clinging to the unchangeable. Our world exists in perpetual change. Technologies that were science fiction a decade ago are now obsolete. The buggy whip maker who ignored the automobile's invention went out of business. The company clinging to old methods while competitors innovate is doomed. This process of creative destruction, as economist Joseph Schumpeter called it, isn't a flaw in capitalism, it's the very engine of its progress. But, and this is a gigantic but, you can only feel free to embrace change if you're solidly anchored to a set of things that never change. The author uses the symbol of the Jewish star, the Star of David, to illustrate this. It's made of two interlocking triangles. One triangle, standing firmly on its base, represents things that are constant and unchangeable. Your core values, your family, your relationship with God, the fundamental principles of human nature. The other triangle, balanced precariously on its point, represents things that are always changing: technology, markets, social trends. A successful life and business requires mastering both. You must be able to adapt, innovate, and change with the times, while never abandoning your core unchangeable values. The Gniewish brothers, founders of the online jewelry store ice.com, are a perfect example. During the dot-com boom, they were surrounded by the growth at all costs mantra. Companies were burning through millions in venture capital, obsessed with market share and eyeballs, while sneering at the old-fashioned idea of profit. But the Gniewish brothers, rooted in ancient tradition, knew some things never change. Businesses that don't make money eventually fail. While their competitors spent lavishly and went bankrupt, they focused on the unchangeable principle of profitability and survived and thrived. To navigate this tension between the changeable and unchangeable, you need special wisdom. You need to see where things are headed. This is the seventh commandment: learn to foretell the future. This doesn't mean you need a crystal ball. Seeing the future in a business context is about recognizing patterns and understanding cause and effect. As the Talmud says, who is wise? One who can see what will be hatched from the egg that has been laid. It's about seeing tomorrow's consequences in today's events. The first law of seeing the future is looking backward. As Patrick Henry said, I know of no way of judging the future but by the past. Things tend to continue in the direction they're already going, unless acted upon by some external force. By studying trends, cycles, and history, you can develop an intuition for where things are headed. But to hear the faint footsteps of approaching trends, you need to block out the present's noise. The author recommends setting aside regular, consecrated quiet time, a sort of Sabbath session, where you're in receive mode rather than transmit mode. It's in these moments of quiet contemplation, away from the constant bombardment of emails, news alerts, and social media, that the future's subtle signals can be heard. But even with the clearest vision of the future, you can't succeed without a deep understanding of wealth's very substance. This brings us to the eighth commandment: know your money. What is money? It's not the paper in your wallet or the numbers on a screen. Money, Rabbi Lapin explains, is a quantifiable analog for your life force. It's a spiritual substance. It's a distilled representation of your time, your skills, your experience, your relationships, and your persistence. There's more to you than your money. but there's nothing more to your money than you. This is a radical idea. It means money isn't an external thing you chase. It's an internal thing you cultivate. The very creation of money depends on a spiritual quality, trust. A check is just a piece of paper. It only has value because the person accepting it trusts you'll honor your promise. A dollar bill is only valuable because we all have faith in the promise of the government backing it. Money is an invisible network of trust, linking us all together. And because money gets created through human interaction, it's not a finite resource that's merely divided up. It's created from thin air every time two people engage in a voluntary, mutually beneficial transaction. The author illustrates this with a simple story. A young man with $20 walks into a shoe store. He values a pair of sneakers at, say, $35. The store owner values them at $15, what she'd be willing to sell them for. The transaction happens at $20. Before the transaction, the total wealth in this little two-person economy was the man's $20, plus the store owner's $15 shoes, totaling $35. After the transaction, the owner has $20 in cash, and the young man has shoes he values at $35. The total wealth is now $55. Where did that extra $20 come from? It was created. It was born from a human interaction where both parties walked away happier and better off than before. This is the magic of business. It's not a zero-sum game. It's a positive-sum game where new value is constantly being created. Understanding this spiritual nature of money is the key to attracting more of it. And this leads to the most paradoxical and powerful commandment of all. The 9th commandment, act rich. Give away 10% of your after-tax income. This sounds completely irrational. How can giving money away possibly make you richer? The author gives 3 profound reasons. First, it makes you feel rich, which in turn makes you act rich. The Bible tells the story of spies sent to scout out the Promised Land. They came back terrified, saying, "We felt like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and that is how we appeared to them." The lesson is profound. If you see yourself as small and insignificant, that's how the world will see you. People are suspicious of doing business with desperate people. A transparently needy salesperson makes us uncomfortable. But someone radiating an aura of abundance, of not needing the deal, is magnetic. Giving money away, even when you feel you can't afford it, is a powerful act of defiance against a scarcity mindset. It forces you to see yourself as a benefactor, a giver, not just a taker. It transforms you from a grasshopper into a giant in your own eyes, and therefore in others' eyes. Second, giving money away forces you to expand your network. To give effectively, you often need to join charitable organizations. These groups, whether a church, a hospital support group, or a civic club, are filled with other givers, often successful and well-connected people. And you're meeting them in an environment of selflessness, which is perfect ground for building genuine, lasting relationships. Third, and most subtly, giving money away trains your investment muscle. To succeed in business, you'll inevitably have to risk your hard-earned money. You'll have to invest in your own enterprise, sign a lease, or hire an employee. This is scary. It feels like letting go of something precious with no guarantee of return. Giving to charity is perfect training for this. Every time you write a check to a cause you believe in, you're practicing the act of releasing money into the world with faith, but without a guarantee of personal return. You're building the spiritual and emotional fortitude required to take the calculated risks essential for wealth creation. Giving money away is like digging a tunnel out of a besieged city. It's an act of sending resources out in order to create a channel for resources to come in. This leads us to the final, capstone principle, the one that ties everything together, the 10th commandment, never retire. In ancient Hebrew, there's no word for retirement. The concept simply doesn't exist. Why? Because the idea that life is a journey with a final destination called retirement is a destructive myth. The belief that you're working toward a day when you'll no longer have to work subconsciously infects all your thinking. It makes you see work not as a noble calling, but as a temporary burden to endure. It encourages you to slow down as you approach the finish line. But life isn't a race with a finish line, it's an ongoing process of creation and service. As the Bible says, man was born to work. This doesn't mean we're born to toil in misery. It means we're born to be creators, to be useful to others. The money we earn isn't the reason for our work. It's the validation of our work. It's the proof that we're providing value to others. Retirement is essentially a selfish concept. It's the declaration that you've done enough for others, and now you'll focus only on yourself. But as Dr. Donald Hensrud of the Mayo Clinic says, caring for others helps us care for ourselves. People who maintain close relationships and a sense of purpose live longer, healthier, and happier lives. And our work is one of the primary arenas for both. The idea of retirement is based on 3 lies. First, that work has no value in itself, only as a means to an end. The truth is, work is where we achieve fulfillment and express our dignity. Second, that people become less productive as they age. The truth is, while physical strength may decline, wisdom, experience, and relationships, the true assets of wealth creation, only increase with age. Third, that people are consumers who need to get out of the way to make room for others. The truth is, humans are creators. We produce far more value than we consume. You should never plan to retire. You may change occupations. You may slow down. You may transition from being an employee to a consultant, or from running a large company to mentoring young entrepreneurs. But you should never stop being useful. You should never stop serving. Because in the ancient Jewish worldview, that's what life is all about. As we come to the end of our journey through Thou Shalt Prosper, it's worth pausing to reflect on the sheer power of the ideas we've just explored. This is so much more than a book about money. It's a book about life. It's a blueprint for a life of purpose, connection, and, yes, prosperity. What Rabbi Daniel Lapin has done is decode a system of thought that has, for millennia, produced extraordinary results. And at its heart is a single, radical idea: that the pursuit of wealth is not a selfish act, but a spiritual one. In our modern world, we're so often taught to separate our spiritual lives from our financial lives. We have our Sunday mornings for faith and our weekdays for finance, and the two are never supposed to meet. This book shatters that false wall. It shows us that business, at its best, is a deeply spiritual practice. It's about building relationships based on trust. It's about having faith in a future you can't yet see. It's about transforming yourself into a person who can lead, serve, and create value for others. The most powerful lesson for me is the redefinition of wealth itself. We tend to think of wealth as something we have: a number in a bank account, a portfolio of stocks, a collection of assets. But this book teaches us to see wealth as something we do. It's the result of our actions, our relationships, and our character. Money isn't the goal. It's the byproduct of a life lived in service to others. This is an incredibly liberating and empowering idea. It means your financial destiny isn't determined by external forces you can't control. It's determined by internal forces you can control: your beliefs, your habits, your connections, and your character. So how can we start applying this ancient wisdom to our lives today? Here are a few simple, practical actions you can take. First, reframe your work. Whatever you do for a living, whether you're a student with a part-time job, an artist, an engineer, or an entrepreneur, spend 5 minutes at the start of each day thinking about who you're serving, who benefits from your work. See yourself not as someone just earning a paycheck, but as someone contributing to others' well-being. This simple mental shift can transform your attitude and your effectiveness. Second, start the habit of giving. The 9th commandment, to give away 10% of your income, can seem daunting, but you don't have to start there. Start with 1%, or even just a fixed amount each week, no matter how small. The point isn't the amount, it's the act. The act of regularly letting go of money trains your soul to believe in abundance, not scarcity. It's the single most powerful way to act rich, and in doing so, begin the journey of becoming rich. Third, never stop learning and connecting. Read books outside your field. Join a group, a church, a club, a volunteer organization, and focus on building genuine friendships with no agenda, and never, ever stop thinking about your own growth. You are a business, and that business needs constant investment. Thou Shalt Prosper is more than a book. It's a manual for living. It provides a timeless framework for success that's as relevant today as it was 3,000 years ago. It reminds us that the most profound financial truths are also the most profound spiritual truths. That was a summary of Thou Shalt Prosper by Rabbi Daniel Lapin. We've touched on the core commandments today, but I'll be completely honest with you. A summary can only ever be a map. The real treasure gets found when you walk the path yourself. The true magic of a book like this happens in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or a simple phrase connects with you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is your guide to help you decide if this journey is for you. If anything we've discussed today has sparked something inside you, I urge you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can genuinely rewire how you see your work, your wealth, and your world. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found value in our journey together today, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel. It tells us we're on the right track, and it ensures you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep growing together.